Whew, just finished a little bit of a sweat sesh. It is like 37 degrees outside right now. We're in the middle of a heat wave. For my US friends, that is around, I think it's 98 degrees Fahrenheit. I just did a little bit of a jump rope and lunges. So you guys know too that it wasn't an overnight thing where I healed and was able to do all this physical activity. Prior to healing, I was a very fit, strong, healthy person, and I was an officer. I had muscles and strength and was trained in combative and defensive tools, and I was still unable to do much. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my journey back to exercise with you guys. Once I started to work with my nervous system and feel some safety or sense some safety at moments, I started to just experiment with different activities, different physical activities. I started with some really, really gentle yoga. And I remember following, I don't know if you watch Adrienne, Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. She had some really restorative poses. When I first started, the first, few weeks, maybe even month and a half or so, I was just laying flat, not doing much. Sometimes would turn or move, that sort of thing. Then I started to get a little bit stronger. Obviously, I trained with this. I incrementally trained. I sent a message of safety to my survival brain prior to doing these exercises, and then I went in and would do them. And then after that, if I was feeling symptomatic, because most of the time it was, I would also send that signal, and that might look like a talk down, a brain retraining round, a visualization, some somatic tools. I then, after the yoga, started to experiment with resistance bands. For those who have been diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS syndrome, you've probably been told this, that the quads need to have muscle on them in order to pump the blood throughout the body. And so that's what I was told. I was like, make sure you get that muscle strengthened. And so I started to work with resistance bands around my thighs. And so I would, even in bed, I would do pushing the resistant band out in, like that inner and outer thigh workouts. I would also use them on my arms, and very, very gradual. I'm talking like snail's pace. Eventually started getting stronger. The resistance bands I ordered were off Amazon. I just looked in, I found like the plastic ones. And then I started to get a little stronger. So then I kind of moved to obviously walking. I didn't walk much because I didn't feel safe to be walking on my own yet at that time. But when I had someone with me, I would choose walking over any of the other activity. Then I actually had a recumbent bike, like a sitting bike that you could use at home. And so I started with that. So I was like, okay, Vanessa, you're sitting, you're safe, let's try. So then I, started to build my cardio. 30 seconds was insane for me. Maybe a minute, then it got to 2 minutes. And what I did while I was on the bike is I would put on a show that was very nostalgic and feel good for me. Often it was a show from my past, or like Gilmore Girls, because that just reminded me of a really good time in my life. And so I would watch that because it would send messages of safety, like, oh, okay, we're okay. And I was slightly distracted from the physical. And before I knew it, I would look down and say like, oh my God, I did 5 minutes. Wow. Right? Or let's see what we can do a little bit longer. Again, I did not push myself. I gradually increased. I kind of went by, I didn't set a marker for me, like you have to get it 5 minutes today, or you have to be 10 minutes today. I just did what I could. And you know what? Some days I felt like doing more, and some days I felt like doing less. And that was okay. That was just where I was at in that day. It was just a reflection of my state in that moment. It didn't mean it would stay that way, but I stayed consistent with it. I kept going, I kept trying. So, it wasn't every single day, but I did move in some way every day. But with the actual physical exercise component, I kind of started with like 2 to 3 days a week, and I would have that recovery time in between. And then that kind of started, as I healed, as I started regulating, that just grew and grew into weight training. I had weights at home, and then, core exercises, I would do some exercises online. I loved the Nike app back then. We didn't have Peloton. And obviously I have a background in exercise, so I kind of knew what to work with. And so I started doing those. Again, to be sure to know what the story was behind. What was my motivation for doing this? Was it like pressure? Like, oh no, Vanessa, you have to get fit again. Oh no, you have to get back to where you were. No, it was like, Vanessa, we've been through the ringer. Let's try and build some strength. We are working our brains. Our brains are incredibly powerful, and we're probably exercising them more than ever. And so we're building that skill, that muscle. And so let's work on something to also strengthen our body and also connect to the feel-good chemicals from these exercises. So I did it out of love for myself, with compassion, with grace, without pushing, without that militant attitude. And it started to flow. And then it got easier and easier, until I was able to build up to running again, jogging again. Although that's not my go-to exercise anymore, I prefer skipping. I remember even starting with skipping, it was a matter of like 10 seconds was intense. And now it's like I can go up to 15 minutes. I see the physical aspect of healing also important. We want to be able to work on our nervous system. That is key. That is the foundation. And then everything else follows. So when you're ready and you're at a place where you're feeling you want to incorporate exercise again, start slow. Do it from a place of love and compassion, and do it from that place of, what is your goal? What is the story behind it? Is it because you're feeling like you have to get back to this state, or you have to prove something? Or is it because this is good for you, and in the long run, it's just going to benefit you? I also have a awesome workshop on incremental training where I talk a little bit about this, actually quite a bit about this. So if you wanted to check that out, you could check the link in my bio, depending on where you are. I just wanted to share a little bit about that, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of watching me, moving and exercising and thinking it was, this overnight, or, she can do it, but I can't. And trust me when I tell you, I was probably where you're at right now. I was completely bedridden, unable to stand, and there's nothing special about me at all. I just used these resources. I implemented these tools and practices and this knowledge daily, and I showed up. I just showed up compassionately.